as action figure collectors, something that just comes with the hobby is the fact that we tend to project the feeling that we are the center of the toy universe. And while this is justified in the sense that we're so emotionally connected to our product line and, well, we see it very much as something produced for us, despite being sold in the retail aisle where kids are doing the buying. Another big part of it is the whole relationship between the US and the rest of the market. Despite what those of us in the US think, there is another larger market out there known as the global toy market. And obviously, this encompasses a lot more countries outside the US. Granted, the US is still the largest customer base for toy product. There are many areas that are catching up, and as a total, international now equals more than what the US takes in. That used to be very different. It used to be sort of a 60-40 split, and now it's kind of a 55-45 split. So international is becoming a much larger factor. As collectors, we're familiar with the concept of foreign release packaging. This goes back to the 70s and 80s and 90s, where you had versions of figures you could get in the US, outside the US, in different languages. Now, things are a little different. Now we tend to get figures that are what are called on 4L packaging. So while we tend to call it foreign releases, in the industry it's known as 1L, 4L, 5L, even 9L, the L meaning language. So a 4L package, like what you're seeing here, you'll notice that it translates the accessories, like pizza slice or goblin glider, but it does not translate the name of the characters or the brand names or the character sub-brand, Marvel Comics, Spider-Man, Green Goblin. All of that remains in English because the character names are now strong enough that they don't need translation. They're recognized. But this isn't always the case. And in order to ensure that packaging can go to the greatest number of locations, they, meaning the toy industry, has switched over to this new 4L standardization. So, for example, in Canada, you cannot ship product unless it's also in French. So, by making a package in 4L, you now have one package that works for both the US, French, and in this case, European markets. So, if you wind up with product in 1L, you can only sell it to the US, at least that's how it used to be. Now, with the 4L package, it allows you to sell it to many markets, and you're not stuck with product. Now, as far as translations, it's not always the case where the names just carry over. So you may be familiar with this character, or you may not. I know I picked an obscure one with this guy. I think his name is Batsman. If you live here in this beautiful city in Spain, well, you don't have Bruce Wayne. You have Bruno Diaz, and you don't have, his sidekick is Ricardo Tapia. So that's very specific to that country. Much like this character that we recognize in America as Ronald Ruck, friend of Ricky Rouse, well, if you are from Italy, well, you're going to call him Pomperino. Sorry, I don't speak Italian. Which is actually, well, it means little goose. I did look that one up. So, yeah, Donald Duck's a goose in Italy. All right, Masters of the Universe. The reason that I'm bringing this up is it's a very, very interesting case as far as name translation. Back in the 80s, there was a very, very large international market for Masters of the Universe. Not that this has changed entirely, but it was huge in the 80s. And in particular, the German market, especially today, is looked back on as one of the dominant foreign areas for, well, MOTU domination, if you will, in the 80s, especially because in Germany they had their own content in the form of audio dramas, radio dramas, that were never released or translated for the US English-speaking market. And it meant that German fans kind of had their own continuity, their own storylines, and their own entertainment, especially because they didn't have access to Filmation the way of the rest of the US-speaking market did. So it tended to have sort of a niche takeoff in Germany because there was a lot of feeling of ownership over the brand, over the unique content. That's not the same as this other country on the edge of Europe. It's called France. Well, France has a ton of unique names, more than any other country, any other language, and probably any other toy line. More Masters of the Universe characters had alternate names in French than probably, they kind of hold the record. And if you are a fan of Masters de Univers in France, well, you own very different characters than you would in any other part of the global market. Most markets kept the names, and in English, He-Man, Castle Grayskull, Skeletor, it was pretty standardized and had, well, recognition in all over the English-speaking world. Not so much in the Francophone world. Some of those names don't translate as well. Some of them, fine as is. Skeletor, a derivation off the word skeleton, which the French word for skeleton is very similar, so you just have the OR added, which basically is like the MOTUization of a name, the way you can do like a name generator for Star Wars or Harry Potter, actually I think even Masters of the Universe. So He-Man became musculeur. Musculeur meaning basically a man of muscles. He was the hero of good, le héros de bien. And this was, again, the MOTUization of a word. The word He-Man wouldn't translate. I guess, like home I don't know. Musculaire, either way, musculaire is the French muscle system. So musculeur is just a MOTUization of a French word for muscle. So hence He-Man becomes Muscle Man, more or less, which is definitely a Francophone version of He-Man, because He-Man has very colloquial meaning for the English-speaking word. So even if it was a variant of musculaire, like the laser light or laser power version, he just became musculaire glaive supreme, which is light supreme, or light power. There were characters that didn't need a unique name. Names like King Randor, easily translated to Ré Randeur. Ré meaning is the French word for king. So yes, a king is a king is a king, even though they usually chop their heads off in France. But other characters, not so much. Evelyn became Demonia, which more or less translates into sort of evil magic woman, which, definitely describes her. And that's because, Evelyn doesn't have a counterpart. Or Trapjaw, for example. So his French name is Dantos. Dent is French for teeth, or for a dentist. And so again, you're just taking the OR, the MOTUization, and putting it on the French word for teeth. So he kind of becomes Teeth Guy. Merman, Oceanaire. Now, mer is the French word for ocean. Mer means ocean. And so it could have been like Homme de mer, man of ocean, or mer homme, but it just doesn't roll off the tongue that well, and I think they were getting caught up on that by combining the word for man and ocean. So Oceanaire becomes easier to say. Or for man-faces, Masquer. He's noted as Ami de musculaire, il a trois visages, monster, robot, humain, which translates to friend of He-Man. He has three faces, monster, robot, and human. Same features, same, role, but Frenchified, because faces, which is just a MOTUization of many faces. I guess it would be like beaucoup de visage. That doesn't sound like a superhero character. Too bad, batet. So batet, it really should have a dash. Tete is the French word for head, like tete-a-tete, like head-to-head. So batet would be to head. So I guess too bad would be like de mal. Mal is the French for bad, or mal de deux. So again, it doesn't really sound scary. Scareglow, one of my favorite French names, not just because of Mighty Spector, but I like ghosts too. Spector, a MOTUized version of the French word for ghost. So I guess you could have done Scareglow. That would have been like what? Peur d'illumination, like fear of light, or light fear, illumination de peur. Doesn't really roll off the tongue the way a Spectero does. Beware, Spectero! You're not really going to run from, peur d'illumination. Just sounds more like a public service or something. It wasn't just the characters, of course. The sidekicks, the beasts, the vehicles, even the playsets had the same treatment, and again, uniquely in France. So, while we had Battle Cat in the US-speaking areas of the world, in Francophone countries, he became Tiger du Combat, meaning combat tiger or battle tiger. So, I guess calling him a chien de combat, cat of combat, just didn't sound as vicious as tiger. And it does clearly make him a tiger, where in other countries he's just a cat. Castle Grayskull, named after Don Glut's girlfriend of the time, Linda Gray, because he wanted to find a way to somehow get his signature on the line, since it was a work for hire and he wouldn't be credited, so hence Grayskull for his girlfriend. Well, that didn't work as well in France, so it became Le Château d'Ombre, which means the Castle of Shadows. Chateau, castle, Ombre, shadows. Kind of a cool name, actually. I think that might have worked if Don Glut hadn't been dating Linda Gray at the time. Could we have had the Castle of Shadows, or Shadow Castle, as the name for the playset in the brand. Might have been kind of cool. Likewise, Skeletor hung out in Chateau de Malarique, which is kind of a castle of evil. No mention of snakes or a mountain or anything like that. It's a castle now, no longer a mountain in French. And while you could have had, Serpent Mont or Serpent Mound, I don't know how you, it doesn't work as well. So yeah, very interesting. France, just the language, the way it works, it created unique names unlike any other area in the release. I hope you enjoyed this. I wish you bonne nuit à tout à l'heure. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please do share it with others, fans of language, fans of toys, fans of how translations work. Hey, it all works. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.